With historic low interest rates, this may be the perfect time to refinance or to buy your dream home. Call Ishu Yochana today, a loan consultant at Loan Depot, for a complimentary loan consultation. Ishu is fluent in English and Assyrian, possesses over 18 years of experience, and is licensed in Arizona, California, Florida, Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin.
شلام على أخونا ريبيكا سايمون من جيبت يوداء شميران قبول أخوي ممشينا وديو بيتايخ أموخون من convention 88 يوشيت تريل بإستريخا جو توسان أريزونا أرخان أمان أوديو إليخا جورناليست بشمد جوزيف سنيل جوزيف برقول فيلم سكول من USC وخارطة من نورث ويسترن شغيلو لي ماسترز جو جورناليزم أديك بالغ خادنا ميديا كومباني بشمت المونيتور وإتلي خا Assyrian جورنال إلى قد خادنا جورنالي قد جانو بكتابه لباسط إيفنتد وإشويت أطوراي أهم زمتن دوية بليشانت English. Shalom Aleichem, Joseph Snell.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Welcome to our program at Shamiran Media. I'm very excited to be speaking to another journalist.
Yeah, me too.
And tell me a little bit about yourself, your parents. Are you part Assyrian?
Yeah. So I grew up in Indiana with 3 sisters, and I'm half Assyrian, so my mom was born in Iraq. And I grew up in Indiana, and then I studied art for a year in Chicago, and then after I studied art for a year in Chicago, I transferred my program. So I went to USC and I studied film and business law. And when I studied there, my idea was to become an executive or a producer in the film industry. And I did a little bit of writing at the time. I didn't take it very seriously. It was just something I did for fun. I would write about different film projects my friends were working on, or different actors or actresses in the program that tried to move up. So I did a little bit of that, and then I graduated in 2012. And when I graduated, I was placed into a program that Fox Networks Group had just launched. It was called Opportunity Fox. And
was that an internship or was that a job?
No, it was a job.
It was a job.
Full-time, full paid. They chose, it was like a 3 or 4 round interview process, and they chose 8 or 9 of us from across the country. So there were a few students from Stanford and Berkeley and USC, UCLA, a few other places as well. And they paired each of us up with a different executive at Fox. So somebody went with the CEO of Fox, somebody went with the CFO of Fox. I was paired with the head of Fox Sports, Eric Shanks. And my role was I travel with him to games. I would work on special projects for him. This was right around the time when they were launching Fox Sports 1. And it was an exciting time to be there. So I was at the company for a year, and I was helping some of the executives think about new shows to watch, or some of their like NFL coverage. And when my year came up, I talked to my boss about next steps and what I wanted to do in the industry. And I told him I still wanted to be an executive or a producer in film and TV. So we worked together towards my next step, which was going to a CAA, or Creative Artists Agency, which is a big talent agency in Los Angeles. And I was placed there in the TV talent department. So I worked under an agent who represented a number of big actors and actresses, and then we were also like part of the job was helping him place them into like bigger roles or bigger projects that were coming out. So I was there for a year and a half, just over a year and a half, and then I went to Fox Comedy Development. So I was working on with a small development team on putting together shows like New Girl or Brooklyn Nine-Nine or The Grinder at the time. There was also Bob's Burgers was there, Family Guy, Simpsons. So it was a good time to be at Fox. So I was there for a little bit.
And what did you specifically do?
So I was an assistant to 2 executives. So the way it would work is that there's the network side of things, and then they have the different shows, and they have different studios. So a script would come in, and then my bosses would read it, or they'd go to the table read, or things like that. And they'd go through, well, part of it was casting. So when a new show came out, they'd tried to figure out who would be right for each role. And then part of it too was giving notes on the script. So what didn't feel like a character would say, or if they wouldn't be in a certain situation. So they would send notes back to the writers and make sure that the script felt very organic. So it was that. It was working on new shows and working on current shows that would come out, and thinking about potential new shows for the future. So I did that for about a year, and then I went to Brillstein Entertainment Company.
Well, what did you do exactly? Then,
so a number of things. So I would read the scripts along with them, and I would give them my notes on what I thought. Sometimes I would help them put cast lists together. A lot of times it was scheduling things with them. So there's something called pitch season, which is just back-to-back meetings of different actors or executives would come in and pitch new shows. So I would help them schedule those meetings and who would come in. I would read new material that was coming in and tell them if I thought it was good, if it was worth it to have a meeting with a writer or director on certain things. So
of course, as a filmmaker, especially at SC or any other film school, you do write scripts, and you do.
I do. Yeah.
You do write your own scripts, and you do make your own movies while at school.
Yeah, that's right. So it was, which was a helpful skill because they have all disciplines writing these screenplays and doing a little bit of directing. So even if I wanted to be a producer or director or a producer or executive, I still understood the screenwriting side of things or the directing side of things, and it helped a lot when I was communicating with some of these writers or trying to figure out which writers would be good for a certain show and that kind of thing. So,
Assyrian Foundation of America was established in 1964 as a 501c3 nonprofit in California to help needy Assyrians around the world support Assyrian education and preserve and promote the Assyrian language and culture. Since 1977, Nimbe magazine has been published under the auspices of the Assyrian Foundation of America and distributed around the world. Every day since inception, Assyrian Foundation of America has been a window of hope to keep Assyria alive. For more info, please visit AssyrianFoundation.org.
All right, so now you're at Fox, and then what?
Yeah, so I was at Fox for a year, and then they helped place me at Brillstein Management Company, which was a management company that represented actors, but the side that I was on was the writers and directors. I could develop relationships with the writers and directors. I worked with a manager to find new clients and to put them on projects and things like that. So the whole point of this is developing a network of people that I know in the industry to kind of work my way up to become an executive or a producer.
And all the while, doing all of this, you're still wanting to be a producer of movies?
Still want to be a producer or an executive in the movie industry, and my focus at that point was working on like TV projects, getting TV projects picked up.
How close did you come to doing that? Because by now, I can imagine you've met a lot of people.
Yeah.
You've had a good networking. You worked with some executives.
Yeah.
And how close did you come?
That's a good question, and I think it's a different road for everybody. And I was on the right path. I was doing a lot of the right things in order to get there. I got to the point where I started to ask myself if that's what I wanted to be doing. And I say that because this was around October 2016, and even months before that, I started to see a lot of what was going on in our own community in the homeland, particularly with the surge of ISIS and the forces that were trying to liberate some of these cities there. So I remember a story of a client that was pushing to have something written into their contract and have something done. It was around this time that there was the liberation of Mosul in October 2016. And I remember there was the breaking news segments that were flashing on our break room TV, and at the same time one of our clients was calling and demanding something in their contract. So the contrast for me between this client that was asking for something that I argued was pretty trivial versus I think this kind of dire situation that was happening to our community in an area that my mom grew up near, it made it very apparent to me that I felt like that's the thing I needed to be doing, was covering some of these stories and working in this area a little bit more. So over the course of the next month, I transitioned and I left the industry in Hollywood, and I moved to Texas, and I started, I actually worked at a local newspaper outlet there. And
Which one?
It's called the Rambler newspaper. So it's in Irving, Texas, and it's actually a funny story how I got that. So I moved into my sister's couch in Texas, and I wanted
Was that comfortable?
It was a change of pace. It was very tough because I was on a path, like what I said, in Los Angeles, and I had in my head like a certain career trajectory of what I needed to do, and it was all my like steps on what I needed to do were very laid out, and I wanted to do that for the longest time, and I was driven, and I was in it to win it. And then when I changed and I moved to Texas, everything became uncertain. My lifestyle changed completely because now I was living with my sister and her husband and their kids, and I was looking for a job because I didn't know that I'd have a job out there. I just knew I'd move there and I'd live with them and I'd look for a job. So it was tough, to say the least. It was tough for a while. I was looking online for like any place that could take me on as a journalist, and at that point I didn't have any journalism experience. I was just writing. I created the free WordPress page. I would just write like myself these free articles and put them up on the website. So I didn't really have any published clips that I could show anybody or tell them that I worked anywhere or that I even studied it in school, because I studied film and business law. So I found this ad online. It was on Indeed.com, and it talked about a local newspaper outlet. It was a hyper-local place. It was a very small place that needed a freelance writer. And it wasn't a full-time position. It wasn't even a part-time position. It was every time they had an event that came up, they would need a writer to cover it, and you make $50 for each article. So each week you could have one event, you could have 10 or 20 events. And my family thought I was crazy at the time, to be honest. And a lot of my friends did too, because here I am taking this like on a path to have a very like successful career in the entertainment industry, and you leave it to take a like a freelance job that you make hardly any money, and you're covering local news. But it felt right. In fact, I had the interview, and they didn't tell me yes right away. And there was another job that had offered me something. It was an entertainment job in Dallas. I would be doing like music work. It was somewhat similar to film, just a different network. It was musicians instead of actors, actresses. And it was a well-paying job. It was stable. It was kind of similar to what I was doing before. And they offered me the position, and I told them, you know what, I really want to work in journalism. Can I have a week to give you a decision? They said, yes, that's fine. So I was really waiting for this other newspaper job to get back to me, and offered me the job, and they didn't do it. I was praying on it, and then I remember one moment I prayed and I said, Lord, I really need to have a job. I really need to pull the strings. So if I don't hear back from this newspaper job by Friday, I'll take this other music job. So Friday morning comes around, and I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to have to call this music company back and take the job. And I get an email from the newspaper people saying, hey, there's like, thanks for coming in. It's great to meet you. There's an event coming up over the weekend. Do you want to cover it? I said, Khalas, I'm done. I'm going to take the job. My family's going to think I'm crazy, but I'm going to do it. So I did it. I took a freelance reporting job at a very small newspaper. I didn't know when events would come in. They would just message me and say, hey, there's this event. Can you go cover it? And I would do that. So I worked there for over a year, and I worked my way up, so I became an editor there within a year, which was fun. So I was helping put there as a hard copy newspaper together. So I'd put the newspaper together, I'd help them with their online. We do a little bit of video too, but it was mostly like print work. I did some really fun stories there. And it was all...
How did you know what to do? You had not studied journalism.
Yeah.
Although filmmaking is also telling a story and making sure you're
That's what I
telling
tell
a
people.
story.
Yeah.
But how did you know the basics and what to do?
That's a great question, and I would say that I didn't know what to do when I first started. But it's similar to filmmaking in that it's telling a story. So I would read a lot of... what I did when I first started was I found a list online of here are the top 100 articles from last year. It was from places like Esquire and Forbes and BBC, and I printed them all out, and I have them in a notebook. It's still in a notebook at home. And I read through these things, and I like highlighted things that I thought were interesting, and I tried to like adopt the same format to some of my writing too. But it was rough when I first started. I didn't know like things like source lists, for example. Having a list of people I can go to for what stories are coming out or quotes or things like that. I didn't know how to conduct interviews properly, and people think it's as easy as just sitting down and having a conversation, but there's ways to ask the right questions to find out what the real story is. So those kind of things, but you kind of learn on the job. Yeah.
How long did you stay with that newspaper?
About a year. Yeah.
And you learned a lot on the job.
Learned a lot, yeah. And then at that point, I hit a ceiling. So I knew I wanted to cover our community, and I learned as much as I could at a hyperlocal. So I wanted to move on and work somewhere bigger. So at that time, I set my mind to getting a master's degree and studying journalism. And that was a conversation in itself, because a lot of people say you don't need a master's degree to study journalism, and I think some people it works and some people it doesn't. But I said,
do you still think that you need it to be a journalist?
You don't need it to be a journalist, but it helps in certain ways. It helps with networks, certainly. It's opened a lot of doors for me, doors that could have opened in the future, but it would have taken a little bit longer. If I were to say if people need a journalism degree or a master's degree, I would say absolutely not. But it helps. It certainly helps. But I set my mind to doing that, so I knew I needed to save a bit of money. So for the next year and a half, I went to a company called Recaro Aircraft Seating, and I did their communication work. So I was working for them for a year and a half. It's company's based in Germany, actually, so I got a chance to go to Germany every few months, which is just amazing. It was an amazing company to work for. But it helped me save money for going to journalism. So it was between Northwestern and Columbia, and the Northwestern connection worked because I had some family in Chicago, and the first part of the program was in Chicago before we went to DC, and it worked out.
So the story about your clients being very fussy,
yeah,
and what happened with ISIS in Mosul,
yeah,
set a career path for you.
Yeah, I think so.
Do you think that was by itself the reason for you to change careers? Or is it that you are a kind of person who needs constantly to be stimulated and you get bored with one thing and you need to move on to the next step?
I don't think it's that. I think it's. I think I've been feeling that way about the industry for a little bit. I don't want to talk mean about the place too much, but it wasn't a place that I think I fit in very well into like the Los Angeles culture. And I wanted to cover the community a little bit more effectively, and I thought I could do that with some of my writing.
You're only part Assyrian.
Yeah.
What made you so Assyrian to
just
show your Assyrianism, your patriotism, by just changing even your career path and getting into covering the Assyrian issues?
I think it was. That's a good question. I don't know. I saw this dire situation going on, and I saw a lot of the reporting coming out about it, and I thought a lot of it wasn't hitting the nail on the head. It was a lot of very negative press going on, but there were a lot of rebuilding efforts that were happening, a lot of leaders that were coming out in the community, and a lot of reporting wasn't talking about it. And I thought that I had the skills to, or I could acquire the skills to tell some of those stories. And I thought it was extremely important to tell those stories, and I wasn't going to wait for somebody to do it.
Do you think as an Assyrian, you are telling the story of Assyrians in a different way than, let's say, somebody who is non-Assyrian?
I think so. And I think that goes for any community, that if you're inside a community, you tend to understand the culture a little bit better. Doors tend to open to you a little bit better to get in conversations with certain people. I think it's just if you're part of a community in general, you have a stronger position to tell some of those stories. It's not saying that somebody not in that community can't tell that story. It just becomes a bit more difficult.
Access is also an issue, right?
Yeah,
access to your sources.
Yeah.
You're more trustworthy if you're part of the community.
Absolutely, yeah. But I think the half Assyrian part of me sometimes makes it tough for even Assyrians in the community to open up to me, to be honest. And I think it's because, part of it is because I don't speak the language very well. So when people know I don't speak the language, sometimes they have their guard a little bit up.
Maybe in parts of the world, not speaking the language is an issue.
Yeah.
Here in the United States and generally in the West, a lot of children do not speak the mother tongue.
Yeah.
And that is an issue. And so, but you're not alone here. There are more like you not speaking the language than not. But that should give you a reason to start learning the language. You've heard it growing up, so it should be easier for you to pick it up if the desire is there.
Yeah.
Take me back to Northwestern.
Okay.
How long was your program for?
It was a year-long program, and it actually the last quarter of the program was right when coronavirus hit. So the strength of this program was our ability to, and a big reason I chose it, was our ability to travel to different places, interact with some leaders in different industries. We had access. Again, access is crucial in journalism, as any journalist will tell you. So the first quarter of the program was in Chicago, and we got the nuts and bolts out of the way, and we practiced a lot of techniques. And then the group of 12 of us went to DC. So we had passes for the Hill, so we could go into hearings, we could talk to senators and House members, and we could cover some of those stories too.
So at this point, you're covering political issues.
That's right, covering political issues, but
domestic political issues.
I had a chance to cover international issues as well. They gave us a chance to really carve out what we wanted to cover. So there were a number of students in our program that were gung-ho about covering the domestic side of these things. And then there was a group of us that were interested in how a lot of the issues on the Hill affected different countries. And I was part of that group as well. So I tried to, I'd go into hearings that specifically talked about issues going on in the Middle East and North Africa, and particularly relating to Iraq, and yeah.
So you chose that? You chose those countries?
Yeah, I chose those countries.
Were you able to travel to Iraq or North Africa when you were at Northwestern?
I did the Gishru trip. I had a chance to travel right before my program started. I went to Iraq through Gishru, and then my program started, and the places we went were already pre-assigned. So we would go to Germany, we'd go to France, we'd go a bit all over the country. We were supposed to go to Brazil and Alaska and other places, but the coronavirus stopped a lot of that. But we still got a chance to cover the Hill, talked to a lot of senators and House members, and I got a chance to develop the relations with some people on the Hill that could help. So.
All right, so now you're at Northwestern, one of the top schools. You are engaged in foreign reporting, you're traveling. Where do stories from students like that get printed?
Yeah, that's a good question. Places like Northwestern, Columbia, some of these places have relations with different publications, and also we have a mentorship program. So I've got mentors at Washington Post and Wall Street Journal and Bloomberg and places like that. So when I was in the program, I would reach out and I would pitch stories to these mentors, and I would also, we had a list of places that we could pitch stories to that Northwestern had developed relations with for a while. And then we also had our own platform that we created. So here's a list of some graduate reporting that's going on. Yeah. So those are, I'm trying to think of other places. I mean, we've had people in the program do BBC, Al Jazeera Plus, Sojourners, The Independent, yeah, those kind of places.
Sometimes we never get a chance to meet our clients. Wrongful death is not easy for the family. That the Injury Lawyers of Illinois we focus on what we do best, car and truck accidents. We're very selective with the cases we take on. We understand and approach every case as if it's the only case in the office. We spend so much time on a given file that we relate to that particular client. The ultimate goal is to make the client whole, is to put that client in the same position as they were prior to the accident ever happening. A client has to understand where their case stands. We speak their language. We have individuals in our firm that are fluent in 8 different languages. The client is aware with regards to what's going on in their case at every level. A lot of people out there don't realize that the big insurance companies are not primarily focused on their treatment, their health. We are. After all, it's the client's interests that we have in mind. We know how to start a case, and we know how to end the case with a successful resolution. We have the resources, we have the knowledge, we're local. We've handled thousands of cases regarding car and truck accidents. That's what we do. My name is Tony Kaligarakis, and I'm the managing attorney at the Injury Lawyers of Illinois.
All right, so now you finished your program.
Yeah.
Now you have your graduate degree
Yeah.
in journalism. You really are, according to the World Eye, a journalist
I
with
wish.
a degree.
What does the word journalist mean anyways? That's a great question.
That is true.
Yeah.
And so, where do you go from
Yeah.
here? What did you do?
So part of the program is, what's it called? It's not an it's a fellowship. So they placed each of us for 1 quarter at different publications. And I requested to be placed at Al Monitor because they were covering the region. I liked how they were doing it. They wanted a voice to feel a little bit more authentic on the ground. So I had my fellowship, which was 2 or 3 days a week. I would go into Al Monitor and I'd work there, just like I was working
What is
anywhere
Al
else.
Monitor before we talk to
I can
you
tell you about that.
what how you got there? What is Al Monitor?
Yeah, so it's a digital news site that covers the MENA region, so Middle East and North Africa. Our hub is based in Washington, D.C., but we have correspondents all over the region. And that's the strength of Al Monitor, and that's kind of what the core of it is. It's stories about the Middle East and North Africa being told from people that are from those communities. And
When was it established?
Oh, you put me on the spot, and let's see if I remember this.
Approximately.
Yeah, 2012 or 2013. Yeah, so it's fairly new.
And is it an American company?
It's an American company. Yeah, it's financed by a Lebanese guy, but it's an American company. Yeah.
Have you met your boss?
I've met.
Boss?
Yeah, I've met the leaders in Washington. So when I was on the fellowship, I got a chance we had a newsroom at the time, and I got a chance to work with a lot of the staff there. And then when I started, we can get into it too. When I started in October, everything had gone virtual. So I'm happy I had that fellowship, because if I would have started virtually, I think it would have been a lot tougher.
And what kind of, when you were doing your internship there, what kind of news were you covering for Middle East, North Africa?
So I had a chance to look for and pitch stories, which was great. They gave me a lot of freedom to do that, which I really appreciated. So one of the stories I would cover, and I really tried to focus in on the cultural side of things. So one of the stories I really enjoyed was Sesame Street was launching a new show targeting refugees. That was their audience, refugee children. And I had a chance to speak with some of the refugees that watched the premiere in Syria.
Refugees in the U.S.?
No, in the Middle East. So these were refugees in Syria. So they watched the premiere of this, let's see if I remember the name of this show. I'm going to blank on it, and it's going to be horrible. Ahlan Simsim, Welcome Sesame. But yeah, so I covered that, and it was great.
So these are refugees, not non-Assyrian, not necessarily Assyrian.
No.
These are refugees from Syria.
Yeah, well, from all over the region.
So
it was geared towards refugees in the region.
And who have settled where?
All over the place. This one particular premiere was for refugees in Syria. But I mean, it's shown all over the place.
So you had to go to Syria?
Oh no, so I was put in touch with, so what happened is Sesame Workshop put the show together, and I got in touch with their producers, and then I got in touch with another organization, and I can't remember the name of it. But for a week or two, I was pressing to talk to one of the kids that watched the premiere, and finally they got in touch with one or two of the kids that was watching the premiere, and I got some comments from him.
So Sesame Street makes these shows for children, but they're catered and tailored for the refugees in the Middle East.
So this show in particular was catered towards refugee children. So the puppets were actually, some of the puppets were actually refugees. So it was supposed to help the children.
But they're not your regular American Sesame Street puppets. Are they different puppets?
They're different puppets, but it's a similar idea. Similar idea.
So they talk Arabic?
Yeah, that's right.
What accent?
Oh, good question. I don't think it was Fusha. I'd have to go back and listen to it again.
And these puppets deal, I bet you, with different childhood issues than what American kids deal with.
Yeah. So the whole theme of the show was sometimes refugee children have a hard time expressing their emotions. So by watching how the puppets interact and express their emotions, it was supposed to be able to help them communicate how they were feeling. So in the story I captured, I think that the boy, he was feeling angry or frustrated. I can't remember the word for it, but he didn't know how to tell people that he was feeling that. So through watching some of these shows, he was able to start talking to people about how he was feeling.
And that must have been so healing to the child.
I'm sure,
to be able to express himself, because who knows if he bottled up his feelings, how that would manifest in his daily life.
And
or
even
in the future.
And even his family members too. I can imagine they were worried about not being able to communicate with their son, so that probably helped.
So you covered that story.
I covered that story. It was a fun one.
How were you able to, you told us a little bit, to get in touch with these children? Were you able to get in touch with these children, the refugees?
Through the Sesame Workshop. Was it Sesame Workshop? I can go back and I can double check. But it was, so I interviewed one of the producers on the show, and then I asked them, I really need to talk to one of the kids that's watching this premiere in Syria. And they put me in touch with somebody, and I was put through them in touch with somebody else. But eventually, I received comments back from some of the children that watched it. So that's helpful.
You don't speak Arabic, do you?
No.
So you had to use a translator?
In this particular moment, they'd sent me the comments from the children. It was all through email, which was helpful. But in a lot of my articles, I do need a translator, And even if somebody speaks English okay, people oftentimes feel more comfortable speaking in the language that they, their mother language, their home language. So oftentimes if people felt more comfortable speaking in Arabic, I'd just bring on a translator,
And what did you want to convey in your story about Sesame Street for children of the refugees in Middle East?
That story and a lot of other stories I noticed were covered through a different lens. They had talked to the executive producers, and they'd talked to maybe some of the actors on the show. But I wanted my audience to see that this show isn't about the producers. It isn't about the executives putting it together. It's designed for the children, or it's designed for the people on the ground. So it kind of shift the story and help people understand, this isn't just a show that's about making money. It's a show that's making an impact in these kids in a big way. That's why I was hoping that people would see that shift.
And your article was posted at the Al Monitor.
That's right,
Okay, now you had a year of internship at Al Monitor, and?
So after I graduated in, I'm going to mess up this date, it was July of 2020. I stayed in touch with Al Monitor. So the fellowship that I had through Al Monitor in school had stopped because of COVID, and they weren't sure when they were going to bring it back. So when I'd graduated, I wasn't working with them at the time, but I stayed in touch with them. So I would send emails to my managing editor, hey, I'm here, I've graduated. If you have any roles that become available, I'd love for you to consider me. And I messaged him a few times, and I stayed on it, and eventually something became available, and I was fortunate enough for them to think of me, so it worked out.
So you're working full-time for them now?
I am, yep.
What is it like, contrast this journalism of the virtual realities and working out of home and not be able to go to a lot of places, with the times that you were free to go anywhere and do any and travel and talk to people in person. How do you guys manage?
It's especially because I want to be in the region and covering these things. I've had a number of trips that have been canceled so far. It's a bit disappointing because I think, and I learned this in Texas when I was covering things on the ground. When you are at a location covering an event or something like that, it's a lot easier to tell like the right story, or like what the story is on the ground. People tend to open up a little bit more. I think with the virtual space, when I'm doing interviews on Zoom, there's a barrier in place, and I think it sometimes holds people back from saying what they really want to say. And then when you're also on the ground, you can see things for yourself. You don't have to rely on a lot of other people's stuff. It's been difficult. There's creative ways to get around it, but at the end of the day, I'm a big proponent of, if you want to tell a story accurately, you need to be there, and you need to be talking to the people on the ground, and yeah.
Because you'll get the nuances.
That's a great way to put it. Nuances that you would never be able to capture in virtual. Yeah.
We believe all people should have unfiltered access to the internet. This will strengthen our society and provide people with equal opportunities. Our mission is to connect your world securely by providing a more safe and secure online experience. OpenVPN is the provider of next-gen secure and scalable communication services. Our award-winning open-source VPN protocol is the de facto standard in the open-source networking space with over 50 million downloads. Visit www.openvpn.net to use our consumer VPN private tunnel or our business VPN solution Access Server.
Tell me about your journal, the Assyrian Journal.
Yeah.
How did you come about founding it and creating it?
Yeah. I was looking for a polished news site where I could post a lot of these stories that I wanted to start doing on the community. And I had sent pitches to a lot of different publications, Assyrian and non-Assyrian publications, and I didn't hear reply backs from very many. And I decided, you know what, I was a bit frustrated at the moment. I was like, you know what, I'm just going to create a site online. I'm going to start pushing my stuff there. So this was 2017, I want to say. I went on WordPress and I created. I put
What is WordPress for our audience?
Yeah,
Tell
it's.
us what WordPress is.
I'm not going to know the technical way to describe it, but it's a site you can go online to create websites, and it has an option to create free websites. It has an option to create more like professional-looking websites as well if you put a little bit of money into it. So I'd used them before. I made like a church website when I was growing up and things like that. So I'd used it before, so I was familiar with it. So I said, you know what, I'm just going to go create a website and I'm going to try to make it look professional, and I'm going to put some of my articles there. So I started doing that, and I would write an article. It was about every month. It wasn't horribly regular, but it got me in the practice of writing these things and looking for stories that were about Assyrian issues and expanding my network. So I could reach out to people and say, hi, my name's Joe Snell. I write for the Assyrian Journal, and I'd love to do a story on this and that. So it was a good way to eventually build up.
Are you the only one writing for Assyrian Journal?
No. So I at certain points we would have different writers come in and out. We would have people that would offer to write different articles, and then they would write it, and then I'd pay them. Right now, at this moment, I am the only person, yeah. But there's and people come in and out and write different things.
So you
all the
add
time.
articles every now and then? Is it a regular thing?
It should be more regular. It's we aim to do one every 2 weeks, and it should be. Ideally, I think one would come out every 2 or 3 days, but we do one about every 2 weeks. It's the frustrating part about when you're working in the community. I think oftentimes these things are like side projects for a lot of people. We all have, a lot of people have like other jobs we have to like work on. So whenever I find free time from not working at Al Monitor, I dedicate to like interviewing or writing these other things.
Are these stories about people here or anywhere?
It started as mostly doing the homeland, but it has become everywhere. We've done stories, and it was Germany and Russia exchange. We did a story in Australia. We do stories all over the U.S., and we do a lot of stories in the homeland.
What is your favorite story that you wrote for Assyrian Journal?
Oh, I don't know if I could say favorite, but there are a few that stick out. Definitely a few that stick out. The 2T Leadership Conference was the first one I did, and I think I'm always going to remember it because I just remember going about it when I really wanted to cover the community, and yeah, I learned a lot of things through that article. There's other ones too. I wrote a story about the Assyrian community in Texas, and how that's growing.
Which is growing.
Which is growing, yeah. And the reason I like that one a lot is because a lot of people didn't know that our Assyrian community in Texas was growing. So the whole point of why I wrote the article was achieved, which is to educate Assyrians about other Assyrian communities in the world. So that one is a good one as well. I'm sure I'm blanking on a few others I've written that I've really enjoyed. There's a few like profiles that I remember I really enjoyed writing. I wrote one on Juliana Tamruzi that I enjoyed. Atur Sargon I wrote one on that I liked. Michael Badal, a few others, yeah.
Are these like biographical? Do you write biographical articles about?
Not so much biographical, more so focusing on something that they're passionate about. So I'm thinking about Michael Badal's and a little bit about how he got into some of the DJ work that he's doing now. It's not an encompassing, like this is where they grew up and things like that. But
do you write some of these articles for Assyrian Journal and then take them, submit them to
like Al Monitor, other places?
Al Monitor, and ask them to print it? Have they printed them? Have they overlapped?
So there hasn't been any overlap. If something lives on the Assyrian Journal, it lives on the Assyrian Journal exclusively. I pitch a lot of Assyrian stories to Al Monitor, and a number have gotten picked up. There was a little video, an article that was written about the fires in Nala recently, about the bombings in northern Iraq. There were a few more that came out, but anyways, yeah. So I pitched separate Assyrian stories there, and part of it goes to audience. So if I want to try to write an article for non-Assyrians to help educate them on what's really going on in our community, I'd pitch it to Al Monitor, and something that's a little more like nuanced for our community, I might pitch to the Assyrian Journal. I just might publish on the Assyrian Journal. And there is a lot of gray area though, so I need to figure that out.
You just gave a wonderful lecture here
at
the
thank you.
88th convention, and I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And something that was very interesting that you mentioned is that who is your target audience?
My target audience.
Who do you want your journalism to be directed at?
Yeah.
So who is the Assyrian Journal's audience, target audience for you?
The Assyrian Journal's audience, and then my writing for Al Monitor, two different audiences. So my audience for the Assyrian Journal is it's Assyrians. It's to educate people in the Assyrian community about different initiatives or different communities that they might not have heard about or they might want to learn a little bit more about. Eventually, I would like to grow it so it has the ability to educate non-Assyrians. And that would be a separate audience that in separate articles that would try to do that. But right now our scope is is catered to the Assyrian community.
Where do you get your tips from?
Over time, covering a lot of these stories, I've developed relationships with people. I've developed a lot of friendships, and I stay in touch with these people all the time. And then also, I scour social media. Every time I hear about an issue going on, I'll reach out to somebody. I'll say, hey, have you heard about this? Is this true? Blah, blah, blah. So yeah, it's a mix of both.
What makes a good journalist?
Somebody that's curious, and it's a stereotype, but I think it's very true. A genuine curiosity. Sometimes people come in with agendas on how to cover certain articles.
We know that.
Yeah, that's right. If you are genuinely curious about something, you're going to, I think, have better attention to listen to them, to really understand what's going on. You're going to ask the right questions because you're going to really want to understand how it works. So I think that curiosity is important.
Where do you want to go from here on?
We got asked this question sometimes in graduate school. Where's your ideal place you want to work? But I don't. I'd get some slack from my friends, but I don't have an ideal place that I want to work. I have an ideal work that I want to do, which is to cover the Assyrian community in an accurate lens, in a new lens. Going back to what I said before, it was a lot of death and destruction, a lot of negative news. But I think a lot of like larger mainstream media outlets didn't cover our community on the more positive side of things. There was a lot of rebuilding efforts and leaders in the community and things like that. So I wanted to shine a light on that a little bit more.
It's always astonishing that with the advent of ISIS and Al-Qaeda and a lot that has happened in Iraq, the Assyrian story in their ancestral lands has been forgotten.
Yeah,
has not been told. And it's time that one of us does the work and tell the story. And I do hope that someday when the virus is less effective and we can travel around, that you and some other journalists will go back there and pick up the pieces and tell the story of our people and what happened. I am sure there's a lot to be said and a lot to be written and told the world community, those who missed the stories, those who could have been there and who were there but never did cover it. And I always wonder why.
Yeah.
You're there as a journalist. You're in Iraq. You should know that there are the indigenous people of Assyrians living there. Why aren't you covering them?
Yeah.
It's a good question. I don't have an answer for that. Do you?
I think it could be a number of things, and I'm not really sure totally why, but some of the reasons why, I think part of it could be an intention, but I think part of it is a bit of ignorance. People, foreign journalists that go over there might not have the education on the Assyrian community still existing there, or if they do, they're not sure in what capacity. I think we'd be well served if we help educate people that we are still existent and help connect these people to people on the ground so they can talk to these people too. I think we got to open a window and we got to open some doors for some foreign journalists that come to these places to see it in a different lens.
I'm a little tougher than you are.
I think you are,
a more forgiving person. You're a better person. I will not excuse those journalists for not knowing. They should know. If they don't, that's their job. They cover a lot of other minority groups, a lot of other persecuted and oppressed groups, and we have been forgotten. There are very few journalists who do cover us. And I know of one journalist who works for Hot Air, Ed Morrissey. He does cover us from time to time. But a lot of other journalists just turn a blind eye, and their ignorance is not an excuse for this Assyrian. Sorry.
No, that's good. Yeah, I don't blame you.
That will give you the opportunity to pick up where they didn't do their work.
Yeah.
Now, in the back of Joseph Snell's mind, in his active mind, is the film industry still living? Is it still something you may fall back on someday?
No.
Are you done?
Yeah. Yeah, I was done the second I left, and I went to Texas. Yeah.
Life is full of surprises, Joseph.
Yeah.
I'm older than you.
You're trying to recruit me into the film industry now,
No,
Becca?
I'd like you to be comfortable. I'm just curious.
Yeah. No, I love the journalism aspect of it.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So what is one story that you are thinking about and you want to cover and you want an opportunity to cover? What is that one story?
Oh, that's
Is
a good
there
question. There's a number of stories I always think about. In fact, I have a list at home of stories that I need to be covering. A lot of them pertain to our issues in the homeland that aren't getting enough coverage. One broader story that I did a little bit of coverage on, but I think just needs a lot more, are the Turkish airstrikes in northern Iraq and how they're impacting our communities. They're impacting our communities in a big way, and hardly anybody's talking about it. And I think it's going to have some dire consequences unless people start acting. Another issue too that I need to be on the ground to really report, I feel like, is the land grab issue. I think Assyrian lands in the homeland are being taken and still being taken today, and hardly anybody's talking about it. And it's a difficult story to cover because there isn't, sometimes you have a document trail that you can follow. Some of the issues covering the homeland, there's no real document trail. So you have to be there, and you need to talk to people, you need to follow the story. And that's a story I've always thought when I go there I need to cover.
How willing are you to get into dangerous zones to cover a story? After all, it's Middle East.
Yeah, that's right. And that's certainly something we had to talk about in class and things like that. I think a lot of these stories are deserving of somebody to go in there and cover them. Otherwise, there's the potential that nobody covers them, which I think is even more dangerous. And then these stories just die out. So, no, you weigh the danger with each story.
Do you think you'll venture out from writing, reporting in the form of writing, to actual, like what we're doing, sitting down with someone and talking to them?
I think eventually I'd love to do that, yeah. And I think a part of that is in what I want to do now. Is you can venture out to some place in the region and have a sit down like this as well. I think it's part of what I want to do now.
It was so wonderful talking to you, Joseph Snell.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Best wishes to you.
Thank you.
And we hope that we will see you on a worldwide map.
Oh yeah, we'll see.
With great exposure.
Yeah.
Bringing breaking stories and important stories from Assyrians, and hopefully you will be their voice to everyone who has not known what's happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you. When do I get to interview you, by the way?
Anytime.
Okay, good.
I don't have wonderful stories like you do.
Oh, I'm
just a mom.
sure you do. I know you do.
I'm just a simple mom who hasn't done much but raised kids.
Okay.
But I can surely talk to you about that.
Okay, good. We'll have to do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
گشقانا مغبة ات يوداء شاميران همزمتن من جوزيف ممليان توا قد كما خوبة اتلي قد متليات آتوراي ات أطرا ويكت إينا شاقلون وميلون قد دنيا چونك الدنيا جانو أنا متليات ديان رابضانات الليلة ماري ليلة حقوية سبرقال جوزيف واتلن شوهارة بيو واتلي هيفي قد خادانا أخجب جرفز قد أنا متلياتو بتآفي دوتان بريشة بسبارة قد شقليلون وبصمنيلون ينتانيلون قد كل الدنيا باسي مرابا من دانخون